Most therapists wait until their body forces a shutdown to start setting boundaries. But Lindsay Boudreau did not wait. She built a practice around what her body already knew, that chronic health conditions and good clinical care are not mutually exclusive. Hi, I'm Dr. Jenny Hughes, trauma psychologist and founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective. And I do this work because I have seen way too many brilliant, committed therapists just white knuckle their way through pain, flares, fatigue, and burnout, terrified that asking for support might cost them their reputation, their job, or their business. In this week's video, Lindsay and I talk about what it actually takes to keep doing this work when your brain and body need something different, and what becomes possible when you stop apologizing for that. So, if you've ever canceled a session because you physically couldn't even sit upright, but still felt guilty about it, this conversation's for you. Welcome. I am so excited to have with me today Lindsay Boudreau. She is a licensed independent social worker in Massachusetts. She is the owner of Elemental Intuition, a group practice in Massachusetts that provides telehealth therapy to the whole state and I think other states as well, depending on licensure.
Yep.
She's also the founder of the Cozy Couch Crew, which we will talk about a lot. And she's a member of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective. There are so just many credentials and affiliations, Lindsay, and I'm so glad to have you so we can talk all about what it's like for therapists who are living with disabilities, chronic health conditions, just all of the things that come along with that work.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for having me on here to talk about it.
So tell me why this topic matters to you.
I think as my own journey with chronic health issues and disabilities have occurred, um, over time, my needs as a therapist have changed drastically. And I've realized that there's no real support systems for disabled therapists. And it can be really isolating because so many messages in our culture are just kind of with that hustle mentality. Like you just have to push through, do more, be more, put yourself secondary to your clients, which are all really harmful messages. And I like to flip that script of we have to care for ourselves first in order to provide that good clinical care.
Absolutely. I mean, if we aren't, there's kind of that sometimes it can feel overused, but like you have to fill your cup first, you have to put your oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
Um, a lot of times, I talk about how self-care can be weaponized against us. And sometimes I feel like some of those phrases of put on your oxygen mask first can be used against us as well. And yet, they are so important. Those messages are necessary, but they're really hard to walk that walk.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I know you and I deeply know how you walk that walk. Even just recently, if I can bring up that example.
Yep. Yeah.
So, you know what I'm talking about. I'll let you tell the story
Yeah.
though.
Um, yeah, so my health journey has been kind of all over the place. I guess the beginning point is that starting when I was 2.5, I had a really bad bout of pneumonia. I wasn't tolerating oral medication, so I wound up having to be hospitalized. And ever since then, it's like anytime I get an infection, it gets really bad. And over the years, that's morphed into sepsis, septic shock. I wound up having to have an amputation in 2014 after infection set in. And kind of this past year, very unexpectedly, from a sinus infection, of all things, I wound up being hospitalized for a week in ICU due to septic shock. And I was doing kind of all the things that I needed to care for myself up to that point. Then afterwards, my energy had not rebounded. I was still having flare episodes, which with that degree of septic shock is normal.
Mhm.
And so I had to figure out how I was going to redefine and reorganize my work. So I have a clinical supervisor who's been on the team, and she wound up taking over a considerable amount of the supervisions from me. I've had to cut back my caseload. And it was hard because I'd been developing the Cozy Couch crew prior to this, but even that had to be shelved until now. Um, the energy is coming back and not having as many of the flare days. So I know based on what I changed in my therapy practice, that doing this program now felt attainable.
And you talked about this already, but therapists, especially therapists who are business owners, it can be really scary to put ourselves first, to put our needs first, because we have to be able to make an income. We have to be able to support ourselves and our loved ones.
Mm,
So, what was that like for you, even just recently, to know that you had to put yourself first and then to actually do it?
right. It was hard. I knew that first week I definitely wasn't going to be able to work. I was in ICU. And when I came back, when I returned home, it pretty quickly was apparent that it would need to take more time off. That involves some close coordination with the clinical supervisor. There were a few clients who were experiencing some higher acuity, so I had to check in with other clinicians in the practice to see if they had availability just for some real short term stabilization work. And I think I took about 3 weeks fully off. And then every week there was kind of one day where I either had to cut down and reschedule folks or just outright cancel. And that kind of happened through, the summer. And it was nice because there typically is a little bit of a lull in the summer anyway. So I was just kind of going with it. Like in past years, I'm like, oh no, my numbers are low. I gotta get more clients in. But that definitely wasn't the case this year. I was really seeing it more of a blessing in disguise than anything else. I think some of the things that were kind of weighing on my mind, a little bit of the financial pressure because I wasn't necessarily bringing in like my normal amount of clinical income. However, I do have a little bit of a buffer because it is a group practice. One of the things that's been very important to my values is that our clinicians are paid fairly and equitably and offering benefits. So the amount that I get per session is often kind of lower than what people would think. Because of that value change. So I've had to kind of keep that in mind. There in Massachusetts, there is paid family medical leave. I didn't need to take that this time, but it's like if there was a bigger flare later on, I know that that could also help. But it's different than working in agencies. I had to take some medical leaves when I was in agency work. Um, I don't have like the short-term disability package. I don't have paid leave in the same way. Any accommodations that I need in private practice, it's up to me to kind of figure out what those are versus a formal process working with my doctor. So there are kind of pluses and minuses with being in private practice, being a business owner versus agencies. That also has its own set of challenges as well.
Tell me more about how you support other therapists in navigating these needs. So, therapists with disabilities, chronic health conditions, what kind of recommendations are you making to them?
So I have worked with a lot of other therapists, even prior to creating elemental intuition. I would say a good kind of half or more of the clinicians in my practice currently also are managing various chronic health conditions, illnesses, disabilities. So I've been very intentional in designing the setup here. I'm not micromanaging people's schedules. There's a lot of flexibility. I'm like, you do what you want with your schedule, take the clients who fill your cup more, that you feel really comfortable working with, where you feel you can be most effective. Because I know that I've worked with clients where they haven't really fit those clinical interests and niche. And it really hasn't felt like great work. And I would dread my sessions. And, they were lovely people, but it's hard when you feel ineffective. And then adding on chronic fatigue that I deal with and brain fog. It's just a bad, bad combination. And with those pieces of understanding, using my own experience as a model, that has made a big difference in terms of the effectiveness that the other client or the other clinicians are reporting, the satisfaction, the lower risk for burnout. Not that that doesn't happen, but we're able to talk about it and work on solutions collaboratively. And a lot of what I am putting into the Cozy Couch program are things that I've really worked with my team and also my own self on, like the different skills and strategies. In our team meetings at work, we often discuss how we are taking care of ourselves in this work. Like, I would say probably half of our group supervision sessions are on that. And, like I said before, self-care is just kind of this like buzzword. And really the roots of self-care come from the 60s and 70s with feminist movements, civil rights movements, that self-care was really designed to help sustain the work, and it was done communally, that it wasn't like an individual practice. So while things like, going on vacation, getting massage, etc., are really helpful, it's branching out past that. And part of it is figuring out how to manage health conditions while doing the work, that we're taking those inventories of what our capacity really is at any given time. And that's part of self-care. Making sure that we're following up with doctors and clinical recommendations is another part of that. But then I think the other piece that's so important, one of the things that I'm trying to really foster with the Cozy Couch crew, modeled on Brave as well, is that community support piece, especially for therapists who are in private practice and are solo practitioners who may not have communities that get it.
And therapists too that feel alone surrounded by others at their agency or group practice because their brain and body have different needs, and meeting those needs can be an inconvenience to others.
Yeah. And when I was in agency work, I wound up needing some ADA accommodations, and work was really great in approving the accommodations and helping me access the resources that I needed until COVID hit. And then it was like everything just got thrown out the window because we were in crisis mode and a lot of staff weren't coming in. So I was having to really expand my role as a supervisor in ways that I hadn't. And that led to such major burnout that I just walked away completely and almost off the field. So, there are some agencies that, do provide that support until, a major event happens. But there are also agencies where that's not the case and it's a battle. So it's really trying to provide kind of information on how to navigate those systems as well. I've had to help people with FMLA claims and ADA claims and short-term disability forms. So that's a piece that I'm going to bring into it as well, like the real practical, like how do you navigate these systems for yourself to help sustain as well.
And it takes a lot of courage to reach out to your employer and say, I need ADA accommodations. I have, done a lot of supervision of up and coming psychologists. And over the years, there have been times when, me and my fellow supervisors have recommended going and getting ADA accommodations to support the needs of the supervisee. And it's really scary, right? It can feel like it's taking a jab at our ego. It can bring up so much of the I'm not good enough stuff.
Yeah.
So, how do you support therapists who want or even know that they would benefit from those kinds of supports, but all of that shame, blame, and finger pointing is getting in their way?
Yeah. Yeah, that shame is really challenging. It was interesting because aside from the COVID experience, I generally had very supportive people as I was navigating the disability piece. Where I found great criticism was within my first private practice networking meeting. And a lot of the people in that group were kind of towards the end of their careers and had these messages of like really needing to be there and be fully accessible to people, including like bending, scheduling, and things like that. And when I said what my schedule was, that I was working just 3 days and they were longer days, but still 3 days, there was a lot of pushback of like, well, you should be doing more. And I'm like, I internalized that at first, but then I was like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. And it's like, they don't know my body, they don't know what I'm dealing with.
Hmm.
And so, kind of grounding into that piece is really important for me to kind of learn. And it's like, I don't have to justify anything. And it can be really challenging for other people to get to that point. And so, yes, there'll be kind of like concrete tools on how to have some of these boundary setting conversations, but a lot of it is kind of that mindset work, and it will be woven in the program with that community support. I'm also offering additional individual time to people as an add on because I think it can be really important to dig a little bit deeper than just kind of an hour conversation once a month and kind of in the chats. However, there are also additional ways of support, like I'm offering co-working opportunities and resourcing or kind of grounded meditation work calls to help address all the different domains of wellness um,
Yeah.
together. So, kind of all of those pieces, I've worked with my team on, I've worked with myself on. And so that will make it easier really showing up to other therapists who may or may not have had any experience with feeling good about the boundaries that they're
Hmm.
setting and what they need. And some people might not even be aware of that either, of what they need. And so, really starting to dig deep and look at what those needs truly would be to continue in this work.
And to see it modeled, to see successful, caring, compassionate therapists modeling what it means to put oneself first so that they can do the work they love the best in the best way that they can. There's with Brene Brown's latest book, there's been a lot of talk about generational differences, right? And I love how Brene talks about Gen Z and just about like they're not lazy, they're not. It's not that they don't want to work, they want to know the why, right? And I also, again, kind of coming back to some of my supervision work, I get to have all of these young, up and coming psychologists influencing me and modeling for me what it means to like take a bio break, right? This new term that I've learned in the past few years.
Yeah.
To really communicate to me what their working hours are,
Mhm.
and to stick to that. And for me, it's been this really beautiful experience of having reflected back to me the things that I try to put out there. But I know from my own like trauma and work history that I'm really, really good at pushing through, and I will just white knuckle it totally to my detriment. So I'm curious, especially as you're thinking about this beautiful community forming and growing, what you think it's going to be like with all of these different people showing up for each other with their different backgrounds, with their different generational influences, values, all of that.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting mixture. I've always really enjoyed working with kind of new therapists as well and interns. I've been intern supervisor since 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And just really kind of getting to know one another on a deeper level, still maintaining the supervision boundaries, but listening to what those needs are. And I really admired Gen Z, where they're like, this is what I need, this is what I'm doing. And like, that's non negotiable. And I'm like, yes, do
I
that.
know.
But the reality is that not always there. And I think, especially for therapists who have been doing this a long time, that message of you just kind of need to push through is more ingrained. And so I think kind of finding a place where we can all listen to one another and learn about these other experiences, I think will be helpful, for the long term folks in the field. Hearing kind of these limitations and boundaries that are set can be really powerful and start to get them thinking about kind of what they need going forward. And then obviously for the newer therapists to just hear about kind of the different ways that other therapists who have been in this field a long time navigate the work and things that they might do, such as setting a clear niche, for example, or clear modalities, because schools don't really prepare people for any sort of specialized work. Like, it's very generalized. You might get classes on CBT or DBT or narrative therapy, but some of the really effective brain body therapies are not taught. And so it's juggling those things too, of like, okay, how do we also add in those trainings that can make us feel more effective in the work, or more passionate about the work with health needs.
Yep, exactly.
And the financial realities that are there as well.
Yeah, and having this beautiful blend and mix of members in your community, one thing I hear you saying too is you're going to honor the fact that different things are going to be activating for different people, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all get to have whatever kind of reactions or emotions, trauma and protective responses that we're having. Most of that is happening at such an unconscious level anyway. And that through spaces like Cozy Couch, it can be held, it can be supported, you can be human together so that you can continue to move forward.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The sustainability piece is huge.
absolutely. So, give us kind of, you've been talking a lot about the community. I'm so glad throughout. And give us kind of the rundown. So, what are all the things that are included? What do people get when they join with you?
So for the month of October, I'm running a founding member special. So everyone who signs up will receive kind of a lifetime price of $10 per month as long as they remain a consecutive member. They'll also be receiving a 30-minute free call with me to talk about goals, hopes, questions that they might have, which will help kind of form later modules that I'm adding to the program. Initially, right now, I do have modules set up, and it is kind of a building process. And it's stripping down to kind of those basic fundamentals and foundations right now of self-care. So redefining what that is, knowing kind of what someone's predominant self-care style looks like, and things that they might want to pull in from other domains of self-care and wellness. Looking at energy mapping, so looking at the flows that we experience during a single day, a week, and kind of over time. And once we kind of know what those patterns are, figuring out kind of our ideals within the work and building in kind of those rest moments. So looking at kind of the small things that we can do, like those bio breaks you talked about. And then expanding it to what can you do in a week, looking at things like micro sabbaticals. So every few months, taking a few days off, not to go to trainings, not to rush all these medical appointments, but really just settling into that rest to help sustain. Then after that, we'll be kind of shifting into looking at some of the additional practical ways of working in agencies and also in private practice, and how to make some of those adjustments. So certainly looking at boundaries as a big piece of that, and knowing how to script those conversations as
Mhm.
well. Doing some practical kind of education on navigating ADA request, FMLA, etc. And then kind of developing from there, kind of based on what the community is looking at. So, there's a whole year kind of mapped out in my mind, and then it'll be a co-creation process after that.
And tell me more about the live calls.
Mhm. Yeah, so once a month, we'll have kind of a content call. I pre-recorded the videos, so that way there's a good piece of exploration there and time for people to kind of go through the workbooks that I've created for each of the modules. And so there it's really kind of a dive into the insights that people are developing, being able to ask questions about how other people are navigating these issues around illness, disability, and the work that we do, and just really kind of having that support and understanding
Mm.
within the community. So it's sort of content based slash support that's
Mhm.
there. I'm also offering 2 co-working sessions because I know that one of the challenges is, okay, like there's all this admin work that comes with being a therapist, regardless of what setting that a person is in. And I know for me, I found co-working to be really helpful. Of like, let's just
Mhm.
have a laser focused hour to get things done and then to check in with people afterwards. So even though it's not kind of a typical back and forth call, just having that kind of container and knowing that other people are there, kind of that body doubling
Yeah,
that
it makes such a big
is,
difference.
yeah. So that's something I'm really excited for as well. Um, that is something I know you and I have also talked about offering to Brave members to
Yep.
join those calls as well, because there's a lot of overlap in our communities.
And I also am so excited to be able to have our communities and the therapists within them connect and support each other and
Mhm.
to support you and all the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And yeah, it'll be just kind of really lovely seeing how that all
Yeah.
unfolds and being able to support, one another's communities as well. And then the final call is a shorter one. It's a half hour per month, and it's using kind of resourcing. So whether it's, the resource and self-spotting from brain spotting, using a lot of the resources from EMDR therapy, as well as other kind of meditations and experiences from my Reiki training that I've done. So just really kind of pooling all of those things to give a rest break, for us,
Mhm.
and to build those additional resources as we're going through, the day-to-day work and navigating our health as well.
Yeah. That's amazing. So there is community there's already a bunch of modules up for folks that are ready with videos and workbooks. When do the
Mhm.
live calls start?
Well, okay. Our first call is this week. So,
Okay.
um, by the time that this recording goes out, we will have had a few initial calls. Um, Starting on the 27th is when we'll have our first resourcing call, and we'll have a co-working session later that week on Friday. And then the general schedule, although the holidays are fast upon us, so there'll be some changes, or that we're doing the content call the second Thursday of the month. We have a co-working call on the third Monday, and then the fourth Thursday, and then the fourth Monday we have the resourcing call. But all of
Okay.
those
Yep.
calls are listed in the membership with signups. I know it can be a little daunting, like hearing all these dates, but that's the general kind of flow of what the meetings will look like.
Okay. And where can people learn more and come join you in the Cozy Couch crew?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at the Cozy Couch Crew. So certainly you can go there as a first initial point. I also have the links to the free Radical Rest Toolkit, as well as the sign up link in the bio. And then certainly with this video, you'll have those links as well.
Yep, we will link to all of that here in the description.
Because they're not your traditional like website links. So it's
Yeah.
just easier to have them there.
Okay, cool. Well, I am just so excited for you, for all of your founding and future members. This is something that is so, so needed out there in the world, in the therapist space. And I couldn't be more grateful to know that it is you that is taking the lead on this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Lindsay. And I'm excited to get the word out there.
Yeah, great. It was wonderful talking with you and being able to share about this work.
Awesome.